everyone, my name is Angie, and I'm the founder of Leg Up Legal. We provide a mentoring program that connects prospective law students to lawyers for mentoring so they can learn a little bit more about the legal profession before they jump into law school. And we've been doing these meetups every Tuesdays and Thursdays during the COVID-19 pandemic so that you guys can hear from real attorneys and legal professionals and folks that can give you some tips and advice on how you can not just survive but thrive during this time. So I'm really happy today to be introducing Kerry Tassopoulos, and he's going to be talking to you about his very wide and varied career. So Kerry, I'll let you take it away.
Angie, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And the first thing that I want to say is, for anybody who has a question, there are no dumb questions, okay? So take advantage of what Angie offers through the mentoring program, and take advantage of me being here to ask questions that are on your mind. I never thought, I live in Dallas, Texas. I'm a lawyer that was admitted to the Texas bar in 1987. I grew up and did my schooling in Atlanta, Georgia, and went to the University of Georgia Law School 3 years after I graduated from college. And in that interim period, I worked at the state legislature at the state capitol in Atlanta. And that's where I first was exposed to politics and enjoyed that from I think a public policy standpoint, and then went to law school and thought that I was going to move back to Atlanta and join a small law firm and be a general practice lawyer. Now, this is in the mid-1980s. And I was one of those students that helped the students above me succeed and get those high pressure, high paying jobs at the downtown law firms. Well, I ended up graduating from law school. 2 weeks later, I was getting married, and a week later, I had moved to Dallas, Texas. So during my career, I came here and I worked for a solo practitioner, and then went to a very small law firm. And so the first couple of years was still sorting through, kind of what I wanted to do, what was interesting. Had the opportunity, because of actually a personal connection, to go in-house to a company named Jana King International, which it was and is an international franchisor. And so at 28, I was the in-house sole lawyer at that company, learned a lot about franchising, learned a lot about being the lawyer who works directly with entrepreneurs, and then had the chance to, and knew that I needed or wanted to be in a legal department that there was more interaction with other lawyers, and had the opportunity to go to Mary Kay Cosmetics. And when I went there as a staff attorney, and had the opportunity. And I think the great thing about being an in-house lawyer, for me at least, was I could support the business in a number of different areas. So I wasn't purely the corporate M&A lawyer. I wasn't solely the employment lawyer. Went and stayed there for 7 years, and then the bug to get back into government affairs, public affairs bit, and I moved to a company here in town called Exec Communications, and it was a telecommunications company in the direct sales industry. I went there to start their government relations practice, and after 5 years, the opportunity arose to join Mary Kay again. I went back to Mary Kay, and over the next 18 to 19 years, had a number of roles, whether they were purely legal, public affairs. I had the opportunity to be the manager of the risk management group and some other business functions. And then 18 months ago, retired, and have evolved over the last 18 months to the point where I've come full circle, and I have opened my law firm here in Dallas as a solopreneur. And I'm very fortunate that a lot of the folks that I've worked with through the years are saying, hey, good to know that you're in business, and we will keep you in mind when we have legal needs. So that's how I got where I am. And the thing that I think stands out in my mind is we don't always know what the future holds, but when we look back, we can see how opportunities and challenges have brought us to be in exactly where we need to be right now. So let me stop there, and Angie, I'll let you lead me down to the next question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kerry, can you tell me a little bit about how, in the different points in your career, how did you decide, yeah, I'm ready to take on this next task, this next step? How did you feel confident in yourself enough to pursue something maybe different than what you were already doing?
Yeah, I think that's, everybody has their own story and their own approach. My, as I look back, I think if I had been a lot more intentional about building skills and knowledge and experience, that perhaps my career would have taken different paths. But one thing that I always believed, and this is, I think, true whether you're an in-house lawyer or a lawyer in private practice, is if you can spend some time learning about who your client is and what their objectives are, but who they are as a person. Because at the end of the day, and especially in this time where we are not able to meet with folks face to face in person, we can meet, online like this. Building a relationship of trust is so critical. And so, one, I tried to have clients that were satisfied with my work. Two, I have had 2 or 3 mentors, and we didn't officially call it a mentor-mentee relationship, but they were my gurus. They were the people that I could walk into their office and close the door and vent, and they would listen, and then they would say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So having what I'll call a mini board of directors that will give you perspective, that will say to you, I noticed that privacy law is a growing area. Is that something that you've ever practiced? Would it benefit you to go take some concentrated CLE in that area? Or, hey, I saw you give that presentation and it's good. Have you thought about Toastmasters or an organization that will improve your public speaking skills? I think as I'm sharing this with you and with those interested in being attorneys, I think accepting the fact that the practice of law is different than what we see in movies and in shows.
Absolutely. Sorry. Yeah, I tell students that all the time. This is why we do these meetups, so that they can hear stories from real attorneys on what their practice areas really look like. Because I think, the level of exposure that the average citizen has with lawyers is very, very small. I mean, maybe they've interacted with lawyers in a few aspects of their life, or maybe they've watched a few lawyer TV shows, but it's really difficult for most people to get a real understanding of what lawyers do. So I love that you're sharing this information about having these mentors and what they've taught you, because I think the other thing that we like our mentees to know is that mentoring is oftentimes an organic relationship. Yes, sometimes you might enter a mentoring program where you already get assigned a mentor, but many times in your life, you'll have an informal mentoring relationship where you'll just find people in your life who are willing to guide you. So what were the things that you did with your mentors to really cultivate that relationship? How do you make sure that you keep growing that relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, one, it's being open to listen. 2, it's accepting responsibility for your own career and for your own development, whether it's personal development, whether it's professional development. And then I think 3, and this is something that recently, and as I look back, reading, not about the law, but reading in a wide variety of areas is helpful, because what it did for me, Angie, is it prompted me to think about questions that did not relate to, okay, how do I perform in the next year so that I can be a candidate for promotion to the next job? Or in private practice, okay, I billed 1,200 hours this year. Well, in order for me to have a higher bonus, I need to bill 1,500 hours. And remembering, and I think this is where mentors, not just in the legal profession, but mentors in life,
Yes,
help us, encourage us, oftentimes hold us accountable for taking time to step back and really evaluate what is my purpose. And not to get into philosophy too much, but life's not a dress rehearsal. And so understanding that, I think there's a difference in finding your passion and using the skills, knowledge, and experience that you have to provide for your family, yourself, your family, and then to have a positive impact in your community.
So can I
And
ask
so,
you, Kerry, over this time in your career, what have you learned about yourself, and what are your values that you use to guide yourself in your practice now?
so here's one thing, and we were talking about this before the call started. Clarity and communication. You know, the biggest challenge that I have had in my professional career is an unwillingness or an inability, or perhaps even a hesitancy to be very clear and very straightforward. And even if I disagree with your position, communicate clearly and respectfully that I disagree. So what I'm learning and what I've learned is I need to listen better. So always improving my listening skills. I need to communicate more clearly. And then I need to confirm that what I've communicated, you understand. And so I think, you know, I think back to one of my experiences in law school that was the most enjoyable for me, and that was mock trial. Because I had this picture of, at that time it was Jerry Spence and Racehorse Ames, you know, the plaintiff's lawyers who were able to get in front of a jury. You think about To Kill a Mockingbird or Perry Mason. And so that experience of standing up on my feet, telling a story, and probably overly dramatizing to the law students who were the jury, that story. I use that because I then have to say, how clear was my communication? Even what we're doing here today. What's going to benefit me, and I have to be intentional and take the time, is to look at this recording in the future and say, Kerry, she asked you a question. Did you answer the question? So those are some of the specific skills that I have worked on. And I think it comes down to taking whatever pride I might have and putting it on the shelf and saying, Angie, how can I help you meet your objective? Not just solve your problem, but meet your objective.
Yeah, it's interesting as we talk to the students about developing their passions and figuring out who you actually are and what do you actually value. I always tell them, like, at the very beginning, you may not have any idea because you haven't had enough life experiences that really test you to ask you, you know, what is important to you? Is money more important to you? Is your work-life balance more important to you? Will you really know until that work-life or the work overtakes your life balance? You know, will you know that you've hit your limit yet? You may not, and that's okay. But I think that it's really important for them to hear from other practitioners, you know, what have you learned about yourself in your practice? What are some of the things that I should seek out and try to learn about myself, you know, and how do I stay true to that? I think that it's really important to show students that, you know, there's, gosh, hundreds of different ways to practice law. You know, you could take so many different approaches, but you have to find your own unique approach in the way that is authentic and stays true to what you believe in. Not everyone is going to be the hard-nosed negotiator or the tough litigator. Not everyone is going to be super articulate when they get up to deliver their presentation or their oral argument, and that's okay. There's still people who don't like speaking in front of others. There's plenty of introverts that still thrive in the profession. So that's why I'm asking you these questions, because I think it's hard for a lot of students at first to really understand, like, how do I develop myself throughout my career? So I wanted to hone in a little bit on some of your past roles so that they could get an idea of what those were like a little bit better. So tell me, what was the very, very first role you had right out of law school?
Right. The first job I had out of law school was as a associate to a solo practitioner here in Dallas. His work focused on the real estate area, and he was doing, this was in the mid 80s. There was a lot of real estate activity. He was doing a lot of closings, real estate closings. And my job was to review materialmen's and mechanics liens. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it was boring.
I was about to ask you that. I was like, and did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it was boring. It was boring. I did that for about a year and
Was
went,
it all transactional work? Did you do any litigation?
no, it could have been litigation in that if those liens had not been filed properly, the client may have said, let's go get rid of these, but it was all paper. I was sitting in the office and I was checking forms to make sure that essentially it was paralegal duties. Okay. I then went to another small law firm, and that's where I really picked up some great advice just in terms of my career, because at that firm that firm did a lot of collections work. And so we had major clients, retailers that were selling goods through using finance contracts. And so I was reviewing those files when folks didn't pay their monthly bill, and then how were we going to help the client recover its money? So again, it was sitting in an office reviewing documents. There was a little bit more litigation at that point. So two things I would say based on that first 2 to 3 years of experience. One, I would have benefited greatly at all points in my career if I had been able to have some kind of litigation or courtroom experience. Mm-hmm. Just the familiarity, whether it's criminal or civil, the familiarity of going to the courthouse, and now not going to the courthouse, but the process, filing pleadings, responding to discovery, understanding the litigation process. Okay. So those were the two early jobs that I was cutting my teeth on. Now, I will say this. The fellow who had that law firm was an extremely well-respected attorney, and he had a small practice and he had done well. But he pulled me aside one day and he said, I can tell you're not enjoying this and it's affecting your work. And of course, I didn't want to admit that.
We never want to admit that.
No, but I did. And he made a suggestion to me. He said, I think you should do some aptitude testing, okay, to see, really where you fit. And I did that. There's a company here in Dallas, and I did that. And what it said is, you do have the aptitudes to be in the legal field, but they are more like the lawyers that are involved in employment law, international law, not corporate securities. So I'm not an introvert. And so finding out early in my career that my aptitudes, how I'm hardwired, helped me get on a different path.
And was that an aptitude test specifically for lawyers? It sounded like they told you about different legal career paths, or no?
It is. I mean, I'm happy to send you information about it. The company still exists. It was not for lawyers only. It was for any person. And it resonated with me because it said, Kerry is hardwired and he's made this way. So regardless of what my interest might have been, okay, what I'm hardwired to do, how my brain works, how my, do I have the ability to scan a document quickly and edit it? Yeah. Do I have the aptitude to come up with ideas quickly? Yes. Well, that may not necessarily work if I'm going to do corporate securities and I'm going to be reviewing, 100-page documents. Okay. On the other hand, employment law, where I'm negotiating on behalf of the company with the union representative, that may come into play, being a mediator, international law. So it was an eye-opening experience.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating. I'm very interested in the study of different, not just aptitude tests, but personality tests. So the ABA some time ago commissioned a personality assessment to try to figure out what traits you needed to be a successful lawyer. And they came up with this list of traits, but what they discovered was you didn't need every single trait to be a successful lawyer. In fact, you maybe only needed 2 or 3 traits, depending on what practice area you were in. And I thought it was so fascinating to me as a young lawyer that, there really are certain practice areas that require certain skill sets and personality types. And,
Yep.
you might just so happen to have chosen the wrong one for you at the very beginning. So if you're feeling like you're not having a lot of success in this area, it may not be because like you're not made for the profession altogether. It may just be that you happen to pick one that's not aligned with your natural abilities. And that's not to say that it's a bad thing either. You might have natural abilities that would make you an excellent intellectual property lawyer, but you might not have the abilities to be a really good tax lawyer. You really just never know.
Right.
Which is why I always encourage students to explore all these different career paths and get, some real experience, whether that's writing an article with a lawyer about that area or just, finding lawyer mentors who can talk to them about these areas, because you may start to find, like, in the lawyer's personality, you may start to see traits that are in yourself, or you may not. And if you don't see the traits that are also in yourself, then you might realize, okay, this might not be the right path for me. But if you do find that this lawyer practices with traits that are very similar to your own, and they're satisfied with their job, they like what they do, they're interested and passionate about what they do, then you might be inspired because this might be a good fit for you. But that's really what people talk about when they talk about fit. It's I think fit can be used in a couple of ways, but sometimes it's used to basically tell you, you're not the right fit for this job. And that can be really hard to hear. But that might be true, but just because your values don't align with what you're doing, or your aptitude doesn't align with what you're doing, or maybe the people that you work with don't align with you. It could be a wide variety of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're broken. That doesn't mean
Right.
that you're not
Absolutely.
meant. So
Absolutely.
I saw that you put the test in the.
Yeah, I couldn't quickly find the website, but I'll send it to you.
Yeah, no
And,
problem.
and there are any number of services like this, and I haven't looked at it in a long time. I will say that our family decided that, or chose to have our children in high school go through this, and we've recommended it to other folks, and anyone who has done aptitude testing as opposed to personality Myers-Briggs or any of those things. It at least gives you some more. It gives you a different perspective on knowledge, skills, and ability.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Okay,
Now,
and then after those two
right.
law firm jobs, where did you go after that? Tell me.
So then I went in-house at Jana King International, okay, which is a global franchisor. It was founded by a gentleman when he graduated from college, and they had not had an in-house lawyer. And that was a place where I learned the value of outside counsel. I learned the value of disciplined work habits. I learned the value of, and I'm still working to improve this, of remembering what is privileged as an attorney-client communication, what is not. I had the opportunity to really learn about business. Why are we making this decision, or why are you, not we, why are you making this decision? It was, in retrospect, I was probably too young and perhaps a little too inexperienced for that role, but it gave me the opportunity, and little did I know that it would lead to me going to Mary Kay, which allowed me to go from just Kerry as the lawyer relying on outside counsel to Kerry as part of a legal team, and then having someone who could be my boss, who could be my mentor, who could be who could help me develop other skills. So
being the first in-house lawyer in any organization can be really tough, because there's so much that business has not really thought through in creating structure in that business.
Right.
So what would be your advice for people who step into the role of the very first in-house counsel?
Right. The first thing that I would do, even if you have to pay for it yourself, is to join the Association of Corporate Counsel. And for those who may not know, the Association of Corporate Counsel is the trade or bar association for in-house lawyers. So it is similar to the American Bar Association, but the programming, the education, the network is focused on lawyers who are employees of corporations. And even if you're a student and you are interested in learning more about the in-house practice, I believe there is a student membership. That's the very first thing that I would tell an in-house lawyer. The second thing I would say is if you have the opportunity to establish kind of a strategic approach to your work, meaning what's priority, what's crisis, what can be outsourced. If you try and handle everything all by yourself, you will burn out, and you just can't. And it doesn't make sense to do that. Now, the great thing is now there's so many lawyers who have made a decision to go into private practice or to go and be a solopreneur, and they might have 20 years of experience in a particular area, real estate, intellectual property, employment. The days where the only choice for an in-house lawyer to hire outside counsel help meant going to the big mega law firm, those days are gone from my perspective. And I think from a cost standpoint, that helps you go to your business people and say, we've got this legal matter that needs attention, and we're not going to hire big downtown law firm
that charges $800 an hour.
Right, because former partner at that law firm has set up his office, and he has 25 years of experience, and he's $400 an hour. And then the one last thing, Angie, I would say is spend as much time as you can devote to understanding the business, particularly the financial side of the business. If that means that you ask the controller or the CFO, can we get together for lunch once a week? I really want to understand the nuts and bolts, the ins and outs. Do it. Because your ability as the in-house lawyer to assess risk, okay, is going to be affected by the financial exposure and financial risk. So there's legal risk, there's reputational risk, there's financial risk. So I would say join the Association of Corporate Counsel, do whatever you need to do to learn the business, and be willing to talk to the decision makers in the company and say, if you want me to provide the best legal advice for you, I need to be able to hire subject matter experts and use them. I think at times there is a belief from business owners that if I'm paying X to outside lawyers now to handle all my legal work, that if I hire an in-house lawyer, then I will cut my legal cost in half, by a third. Well, that may be true, but if that's why you're doing it, if that's why the business person is doing it, in my opinion, that's the wrong reason to bring a lawyer in-house.
Right. Okay. So what were some of the traits that you needed in your first two positions that maybe were different from the traits that you needed in your in-house position?
I think it's the nature of, if you're in private practice, to a certain extent, you are a hired gun. Okay? Angie, I want you to handle this real estate transaction for me. Okay? I need the documents done because we're going to close on November the 1st. And can you do it? Now, Angie's in business for herself, and she says, yes. And she does it. And then I may never talk with Angie for another 2 years, and then I have another deal. Mm-hmm. So there's no connection or relationship. So you have to have that mentality of, I think, so that's one difference. Whereas when you're in-house, or when you're in the government, or you are captive in an organization, you are seeing your colleagues and working with them on a regular basis. You see them in the hallway. Well, you used to see them in the hallway. You used to see them when you would go to lunch. So it's the people dynamics are different. I think the attention to identifying the legal issues, assessing the risk, offering, making recommendations about actions that the business or the client should take, those skills are the same. Those skills are the same. And in both private practice and in an in-house role, I had to remember that I was the lawyer and I could make recommendations, but the client was going to make decisions. And if I disagreed with the decision that the client made, I had an obligation to the client and to the company to then go as the lawyer and represent and move forward with that decision. So
So
I think that answered your question.
yeah, it does. One of the things that I know, one of my friends who moved over from a law firm role to a associate GC role, told me that, you know, when I was in the law firm, I was really specialized. And once I went in-house, I had to start becoming a generalist. I had to start really looking big picture and learn something about all these other different areas that I had no idea about. And this person came out of law school with me. We were trained together. We went to, a small trademark boutique together. Both of us had learned trademark law. That was what we did. Corporate, copyright, trademark law was our specialty. And then he decided to, move in-house. And then once he moved over in-house, he was no longer allowed to just be a trademark lawyer anymore. He was really supposed to start thinking about all these other areas. So do you agree with that once you go in-house, are you more the
I think it depends on the company, the organization. I'll give you a different example. The current general counsel of Mary Kay Cosmetics, if I remember correctly, began her career in private practice as a litigator focusing on employment law.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she came to Mary Kay as an attorney and was focused on employment matters.
Mm-hmm.
But during the course of her career, she did learn more about the other areas of the company. However, she was still the go-to subject matter expert on employment law matters. Okay. So I think it depends on the organization. And also it depends on your goals. If one of your goals when you go in-house is to continue to develop an expertise and be the subject matter expert on privacy, and you aren't interested in either moving up in the legal or in the business organization, then you're probably not going to spend time learning about distribution or learning about or spending time on employment law matters. I think the bottom line is knowing what you are good at, knowing what you enjoy, and knowing the environment that you're in helps a person make the decision of, do I want to pursue an in-house, or do I want to pursue or stay in the law firm, or vice versa. And the one thing that I do want to really emphasize is my law degree has given me flexibility, and I have been able to use it in any number of ways, both as a lawyer, but also as when I was responsible for the risk management area, when I was involved with different trade associations representing the company, when I was going to state capitals, or going to Washington.
Tell me a little bit about that. Your shift into government relations, lobbying, and all of that, that's a totally different world. So explain a little bit of that to the students on what your role was there.
Yeah. So companies, organizations all understand that the laws and regulations that are created at the local, state, federal, and international level, that affects the business, right? And so the majority, I first started doing that work when I was at Mary Kay, because we were selling products, cosmetics products that were regulated by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and we were using a distribution method, direct selling, that was regulated by the Federal Trade Commission and by state law. Well, because I had some knowledge and experience with how government worked, it was easier for me when the company was involved with going to a state capitol and trying to get the law changed to make the legal environment more favorable to our industry, for me to go instead of hiring someone there, or instead of relying on the outside trade association. I think if you look at the surveys that are done of CEOs, many of them identify increased regulations, which are created by government, as one of the things that keeps them up at night. Well, the regulations occur because the legislators have passed a law, and then the regulators, the government officials, have to create the regulations to implement the law. Well, if you want to influence what the state of the law is and what the regulations will be, you've got to get in and meet with the lawmakers before the law is passed. I mean,
so your company would send you to do that. You would go and meet with legislators.
Civics 101, yeah. I was part, either at Mary Kay or at Excel Communications, I was on the front lines going to meet with elected officials and explaining what our business was and why we either supported or opposed the proposed law. And, one of the questions that the audience might have is, okay, some smaller company just doesn't have the resources to do that. Well, you can write letters, you can have meetings of elected officials at your headquarters or your manufacturing plant. And the most logical person in my experience is the lawyer who can help educate the business leaders about why this is important. Mm-hmm. It's what can we do in order to protect our ability to operate our business. So you either do it through the courts, litigation, intellectual property, lawsuits, you do it through passing laws or amending laws that make it harder or easier to do business. And even if we get into things like family law or criminal, all those areas, everything is affected by the legal system. Well, the legal system are the laws. So you have the opportunity and the need and the willingness to get involved in the lawmaking process.
Yeah. We've got a question in the chat box. When I get to a law firm, how should I think about going to the transactional side versus litigation?
Well, first of all, congratulations on going and being hired by the law firm. As a practical matter, they will probably assign you to the area.
Assuming you get hired.
Yeah. Well, let's assume that you are hired. They will probably assign you to the area that needs arms and legs. It depends on the size of the firm. It depends on the process that they have to orient their younger lawyers.
I will say this, that now it oftentimes begins in the recruiting process while you're still in law school. It doesn't necessarily mean when you get to the firm as you're hired, after law school. But really in your first year, when you start applying for internships, they're going to ask you, what are you interested in? Litigation, transactional? And it might be, your answer could be both. I think that law schools sometimes do a bad job of explaining that there are certain practice areas where you will have both. They tend to try to pin you into one or the other, but that's just because they need a starting point. So, right. But yeah.
I think the other answer to the question would be that you call up Angie at Leg Up Legal and you say, do you have mentors or do you have information or do you have resources that can help me understand what am I really going to be doing as a transactional lawyer? What am I going to be doing as a litigator? What am I going to be doing as an intellectual property lawyer? I think, look, the bottom line is some of the skills, you will use those in any role. And that is, what's the issue? What is the current law? Am I writing a brief? Am I in a meeting with a client? Am I telling the partner or the senior associate, here's what the research says about what this law, how this law applies? If I'm drafting a contract, if I'm doing a deal, that's still controlled by what the client's objective is and what the legal environment is. So, and then some of it is, look, if I had to come to the realization that if I was going to be successful, meaning I was going to have personal gratification for the work that I was doing, but I also was going to be compensated for my time and my effort, that I had to just work my tail off. And it doesn't matter if you're doing transactions or you're litigating, you just have to, practicing law requires hard work.
Yeah, most definitely. So then after you decided to retire, Kerry, what made you come back?
Well, I use the word retire loosely because I think
let it go.
I had more than 30 years of relationships, knowledge. I'm not a golfer. I don't have a lake house. I enjoy work. And I feel like whether it was, I haven't yet decided that I'm going to spend all my time doing pro bono projects. And so I think there's an opportunity out there. One of the great things about having a law degree and being licensed is we are able to practice our profession until we are physically and mentally incapable of doing it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a law office. It could be creating a startup company that provides services to the legal profession, like Leg Up Legal. It could be being in an operational role in a company. It could be being part of a pro bono group. So
serving on a board somewhere.
could be serving on a board, exactly. So I think, the value, think of the value of your law degree as being more than just the ticket to get paid for being a lawyer. Okay. That's my perspective from doing it for 35 years.
Yeah. Well, do you have any last words? I know we're almost wrapping up here. Do you have any words of wisdom for people who are pursuing law school right now?
The words of wisdom or the words of experience are talk to as many lawyers as you can right now to find out the good, the bad, and the ugly. And make your own decision. Don't make a decision because those around you say you should or you shouldn't go to law school. And the other thing is, I think go into law school or go into the legal profession with your eyes open. And there's enough information out there to really have a true understanding of how this profession can give you what you are looking for, whether, as you said, it's job satisfaction, money, status, philanthropy, whatever it is. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Kerry. I really appreciate it. Would you mind if the students had follow-up questions if they reached out to you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. That's fine.
Okay, I'll drop your LinkedIn into the chat box for everybody, but thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed hearing all of your words of wisdom, and we actually have, tomorrow is our bi-weekly happy hour where we invite pre-law students, current law students, and lawyers to all mix and mingle, and we do like an interactive round robin. Everybody gets to talk to one other person, and so you're really in small groups, one-on-one, so you really get to know each other. So it's really, really fun. So if everybody wants to join us tomorrow, we'll see you then. If not, we'll see you next week. All right, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Angie. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kerry.
Bye-bye.
Oh, casual attire for tomorrow's happy hour. Just no workout clothes, but you can definitely wear something casual. All right, bye all.